Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Michael Carbone. I'm a business and immigration attorney in Staten Island, New York. Today, I want to talk about keeping your New York PLLC or private practice in good standing with New York law. Now, before I dive into this topic, if you have any questions or you want to start a conversation, please drop a comment below. Otherwise, if you'd like to set up a formal legal consultation with me, visit us at carboneattorneys.com. We have a button in the top right corner of our website. Click it, fill it out, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. So setting up your own professional practice is an exciting milestone for anyone. But once you file that company with the New York State Department of State, your responsibilities do not end there. Staying in compliance with New York law is just as important as forming your PLLC. So I want to go over some important points of what I like to call corporate maintenance, which is basically keeping your PLLC in good standing and making sure that you're following all of the steps that help preserve that limited liability status and maintain that distinction between the corporate entity and the individual owner. So the first item up to discuss is the biennial statement. So this is a requirement by New York law. Every 2 years, you have to submit a biennial statement with the New York State Department of State. The good thing is that they will email you within 30 days before that requirement needs to be filed. And the cost for that is just $9. And basically, you're just updating your service of process address and some basic information related to the company. It's not a major lift. You don't have to file any reports or anything major like that. So you do want to make sure that you file that biennial statement when it is due. Next up is amending the articles of organization. So, people start their businesses and they realize, oh, you know what? I want to change the name of the business. I want to change the professions that are being offered. Obviously, some professions have restrictions where you can't have multiple professions under one practice. But let's say you are an occupational therapist and you want to bring on an owner as a physical therapist. You will need to amend the articles of organization to incorporate physical therapy as one of the professions that are practiced by the business. Now, what's different between LLCs and PLLCs is that when you're filing a change to the articles of organization, specifically a certificate of amendment, changing the name or the professions that are practiced, you actually have to go through the education department. So similar to when you set up your practice, you will need a certificate of authority from the New York State Education Department approving the name change and or adding or removing or changing the professions that the PLLC is authorized to practice. So once you get that certificate of authority, you can go ahead and file that certificate of amendment with the New York State Department of State. And as always, when you're making these changes, you do need to request a certified copy of that certificate of amendment so you can send it back to the education department and finalize that process. Now, if you want to make any minor changes to the articles of organization, you would file a certificate of change. This certificate of change is often used to change simple things like the service of process address, if you want to add a registered agent. Honestly, the certificate of change is basically used if you need to make certain changes to your articles before a biennial statement is due. So if you need to change the business address or you need to add a registered agent, you would file the certificate of change, and that can go directly to the Department of State. You don't have to go through the education department for that. Next up is the operating agreement. So New York law requires all LLCs and PLLCs to adopt an operating agreement. Now, briefly, the operating agreement is kind of like the constitution of your business. It lays out who owns the business, what are the management responsibilities, what the business can and cannot do, when distributions are made, how to handle dissolution, and so on and so forth. So you want to make sure that you adopt an operating agreement if you haven't done so already. And another caveat to that is you want to consider amending your operating agreement if there are any major changes to the business. The most common one being if you bring on a new owner, a co-owner to your practice, you want to amend that operating agreement. if not completely redraft the whole thing, because there are provisions that you now need to take into consideration because you have a business partner. So if you or your partner want to leave the practice, or one of you passes away, or you want to sell the practice, you have to incorporate those provisions into the operating agreement to make sure that everything is properly addressed for your now expanded practice. Next up is the LLC publication requirement. This is a New York State legal requirement. You must publish notice of the formation of your practice in 2 local newspapers for 6 weeks. So you need to publish in a daily publication and a weekly publication, and depending on the county that your business will be in, these publications are either posted on the county clerk's website, or you will need to reach out to the county clerk and get the designated newspapers for that month. So if you are in New York County, Bronx County, Queens County, or Kings County, the county clerk designates the newspaper, so you cannot choose them on your own. You must publish in the papers that they tell you to. Next up is purchasing a corporate records book, often referred to as a corporate kit. This is just a binder that stores all of the paperwork associated with your practice in one nice and neat location. And also, when you purchase a corporate kit, they will also include membership certificates. This is the physical, tangible representation of your ownership in your practice. So it's always good to pick these up. They're quite inexpensive. But you want to have all your documents in one location, as opposed to, keeping everything scattered on, in a drawer, in a folder, somewhere else. Corporate kits are good for maintaining all of your corporate documents in one place. And lastly is keeping up with member resolutions and or written consents. So these are really reserved for major changes to the business. If you are making a major change, such as amending the operating agreement, bringing on new owners, maybe purchasing real estate, you want to pass a resolution or sign a unanimous written consent, which is basically, corporate acknowledgement of the major action. This helps, again, maintain your corporate status. It establishes that limited liability and shows that distinction between the corporate entity and the individual owners. So you don't have to document every single action that you take, but if there is a major action of the PLLC, it's good practice to record that in the minutes and record book for your PLLC. So that's it. That's the video for today. These are just some of the elements of maintaining your PLLC, keeping it in good standing, and staying in compliance with New York law. If you like this video and you want to see more, please like, subscribe, and I'll keep making them.